The first question to be asked, one that I think that for a large part people don't take much notice of, but it's important, Parsha, important question, and that is that basically number one, why was Pinchas made a Cohen because of the fact that he did what he did in last week's Parsha? You had that question?
No, because he wasn't a relative, he wasn't a direct descendant of Aaron.
Well, he was a direct descendant,
Why is he?
but he was already great. He was already. That's the second half of the question. The first question is why was that the result of all the schar to give to him? There's lots of things you could do to reward him for what he did.
The spear.
Buy him a brand new spear or something like that. Gold tip maybe. But in those days, like today, you get watches at age 65 and retire. Well, that's in the movies if they do, but in those days you actually got gold spears when you retired. That's anyhow. But the kahuna was of all the things to give to him, because first of all, as we know from Aaron and Bnei Aaron is Rodah Shalom. So it's true he was definitely brought Shalom for the Jewish people and stopped the Megefa, but still the Maisa itself wasn't the most peaceful thing. David the Melech was unable to build the base of Mikdash because he had blood in his hands. Even though every drop he spilled was completely Shem Shemaim, and always for some reason he wouldn't have done it if not been some kind of mitzvah involved. But there's a mitzvah, there's a reality that Akash Baruch Hu wants the base of Mikdash to be a place that's not, the only blood that's being spilled is that which is the Karbanos themselves. But the question is just why would that be the response? That's the first. That's just more of a hashkafic issue. But the more technical issue is how did it even happen? How did he make someone a Kohen? Because Baruch already was Kaveya Bahar Sinai that if you're Arna Kohen or you're one of his sons, anyone born to the sons from that point onward, they can become a Kohen. But he missed the cut. He missed the cut at the beginning. He was already born. So as Chashuv as an individual, as Chashuv as his Yichus was, nevertheless he wasn't a Kohen. So how do you actually make him into a Kohen? After the fact that it's already taken place. And the third question to do with that retroactively, right. And the third question, basically, is that how can you make him a Kohen when in fact he did a Maisa of Ritzicha, right? He killed somebody. If a Kohen kills somebody, he's possible for the Avodah. He doesn't, even if it's, again, an act of Kanais, L'Shem Shemaim, the whole thing. So that's if he's already a Kohen and he does the Maisa, it becomes possible, but if he becomes pastor, so Kavod Chomer, he should become a Kohen. Give him something else altogether. So how is it possible that he could even become a Kohen after the actual act of killing Zimri in last week's Parsha? Cosme too, for that matter. So the answer for these questions usually come from Shari Gegulim and the Zohar as well. And it says the following thing: Nadav and Avihu died because they brought the unauthorized incense offering. And when Pinchas killed Zimri, he merited the souls of Nadav and Avihu, right? And the Zohar just adds that historically it's the other way around, but this is the way it follows. After Pinchas acted zealously, and the tribe of Shimon came after him, in anger his soul left him. At which time the two souls of Nadav and Avihu entered him. So it's a little bit subtle, but the answer is right there in those two little paragraphs, so two short little paragraphs. Because first of all, number one is that Nadav and Avihu were already Kohanim. They were Kohanim, right? Now, if you had been there and you watched the actual Maisa, it's a very similar situation like this back at the Akedah. Right? At the Akedah, Yitzchak died. Well, the Gemara falls off that. It says, well, he actually didn't die. The isle that Avram was makrid in place of Yitzchak, and the ashes of Yitzchak, of that isle are become the ashes of Yitzchak. Either Yitzchak was killed and shechted and burned the whole thing, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu treats it that way. But the Ohr Chaim points out that's true. There's no question about that. More says it, but the reality is that Yitzchak did actually die at the Akedah. Now, had you been there, would you have noticed that he died? No, because he was there. It wasn't like he dead. He became dead and then Techis and Mason, and he got up and walked away. It didn't skip a beat. Probably his heart didn't skip a beat the entire process, but he did die. How did he die? It says at the moment that Abraham raised the knife to shecht him, even though he was totally masking to what Avram was about to do and willing completely to be a korban to Kodesh Baruch Hu as a Kodesh Baruch Hu commanded, that still is the you're not going to die. There's a mitzvah. It takes away your breath. It takes away your person can the shock a lot. I just listened to halachas on the bus coming over here of on Yuma on Pei Dalet on the base talking about what you can do and can't do on Shabbos in terms of the pekuach nefesh, and it's talking about how basically certain situations of pekuach nefesh are doiches Shabbos, and the Gemara each time has a havamina as to why you would think it wouldn't be that way. Because first of all, you want, let's say you're trapping fish at the same time in the sea. But one episode is basically a child falls into a pit. And the pit may not be so deep, and it may not appear like pekuach nefesh, but the child can become so afraid of the situation and be terrified that it could cause him to die. So because of that, pekuach nefesh, you can save this child, tear away the dirt and all that on Shabbos and something on Yom Tov to save the child, because the fear alone can cause a child, God forbid, to lose his neshama. So likewise, Yitzchak, as much as he was ready, he was 37 years of age at the time, but he was ready to do this. Still, the fact that a knife is about to go into you, it's a shocking thing. It can cause a person to lose their neshama for a moment, and that was actually planned, says the Ohr Ganuz, because Sarah and Yitzchak died precisely at the exact same moments. She saw what was taking place in the distance. It's a machlokus of whether or not she died because she thought he was going to do it. Most, I think, hold that she died because he wasn't going to do it in the end because she thought maybe Chas v'chol he didn't have the resolve to carry the Ziva Kush Baruch Hu. That's even less meaningful than having a son at such a late age. But regardless of why what the thinking was that caused her to die, she died specifically because at that time Yitzchak also died, because both of them had a piece of the neshama of Chava, which was going through Tikkun, through Sarah Menu, and through Yitzchak. The Akedah, the shock of the Akedah was the final Tikkun. So therefore, the neshama was taken away at that moment because it was already Tukan. Sarah left this world because that was the end of her Tikkun, whatever, and that she had to go on. But Yitzchak became soulless for a moment. That was the death that he suffered at that point, because up until then, his neshama was feminine. So therefore, he couldn't get married, couldn't have children. It's very difficult to have the opposite gender. Neshama is actually the person, the Rizal points out in Shari Gulim, to have children. So therefore what happened, the moment that the neshama was taken away, his own neshama was put into him at that moment. So if you've been standing there looking at the situation, you wouldn't necessarily have seen Yitzchak die. You just thought, he looks a little stunned for a second, maybe, lost his breath, maybe fainted, right? But what really happened in the end was, for one split moment, he was without a neshama. And then his own neshama came in, and that's why immediately after the Akedah, the Torah begins to speak about shidduchim, because now he can get married. Now he can have children. So likewise here also, if you see that what happened, there's Pinchas coming out of the tent. He's got Zimri and Cosby understood all these miracles that took place to make the whole thing happen properly, because it was told L'Shem Shemayim. And he's coming out. This huge, massive crowd of people is coming after him, and he can see from their faces they're not coming to congratulate him. Right? They can see this is not the welcoming committee coming to give him praise for what he's done. He's killed a Nasi. As guilty as this person was, as far as they're concerned, and it's total shock. So for that one moment of shock, he loses neshama. But again, it's also planned as well. So Pinchas, as we know him, died for a moment. And the truth is, he still got back his own neshama anyhow. But that moment of Misa allowed, as the Zohar points out, allowed the neshamas of Nadav and Avihu to go into him. So that solves all the problems, all the technical problems. How could Pinchas become a Kohen? He didn't, right? Two neshamas? There actually has four in the end. We're going to see shortly that actually gets a little crowded inside Pinchas. He becomes much greater individual than he starts off. Yeah. Eliyahu, as the Baal Turn points out. But so what happened is, so the Ma'aser Ritzicha that he did as Pinchas is erased in that moment of death. In the moment of death that he actually died, it's no longer Pinchas becoming a Kohen. How can he become a Kohen? So technically speaking, it's the same goof as Pinchas, but the neshamas are Nadav and Avihu, who are very, very, very famous neshamas that hop around historically. They don't seem as important in the Chumash as they are in Kabbalah, because they're just briefly there. They do this Maisa, and then they're basically talking about being burned out, right? They were burned out, from the whole process, and they're gone. And they're mentioned a few times in the Chumash, but it turns out they're very holy neshamas that are on a major tikkun historically, and they keep reappearing. But they go into Pinchas, and their being a Kohanim allows him to become a Kohen as a result of the process itself. As to why that's the reward, so that actually comes more towards the end. We'll just skip ahead for a second, but It really goes to the, over here, right? Over where? Oh, what's the next thing anyhow? Didn't skip it all. It's actually in that order. So it's brought down. The Rambam brings down in the Gemara. He says, this is in Hilchos Torah, very famous Rambam, that there are three kesarim, three crowns given to the Jewish people: Keser Malchus, Keser Kahuna, and Keser Torah. As the Rambam points out, Keser Malchus, that's David HaMelech from Yehuda. Anyone from Yehuda can become a king. If you're not part of from Yehuda, you can't become a king. It's problematic, and that's why there were halachas about whether you can sit in the Yazar, when the Jewish people split into two camps, the kingdom to the south, the kingdom to the north. But for the most part, the Malchus belongs only to Yehuda. That was Chashmonaim's problem. The Kohanim remained kings even after the fact. They got according to Ramban, that's why they were punished so severely to actually be wiped away completely. Not one zero left over from the Chashmonaim. That's they're all their heroic deeds. But he brings, so that's Keser Malchus, Keser Kahuna. As the Rambam points out, he says, he brings the pasuk that it shall be for him and his descendants after him a pact of priesthood for all time. And then he brings down Keser Torah, that's for everybody. Anybody who wants to become a Talmid Chacham, every Jew has shaykhis to Keser Torah. That's open to all of us, right? So the question that could be asked on the Rambam over here, it's a very obvious question, but again, if you're not paying attention or focusing, you might miss it. And the question is, he's bringing down a pasuk for why the kahuna belongs to Aaron HaKohen, why he should get the kahuna. And he brings a pasuk from this week's parsha. The pasuk that the Kodesh Baruch Hu uses to say that I'm going to make Pinchas a Kohen, and everybody after him, all of his descendants are going to become Kohanim as well. That's the pasuk. Clearly it says, you and all those after you. So therefore the Rambam says this shows the kahuna belongs to Aaron HaKohen. There's only two questions over here. Number one is this pasuk talking about Pinchas, and not talking about Aaron and his descendants, right? So maybe it could be unique by Pinchas. And the second question is it fine if you're looking for a pasuk to explain the halachas to why the kahuna belongs to Aaron HaKohen and not to anybody else, and you have no other pasukim but this one, so we can understand why you use this. The only problem is that there is another pasuk. There's a pasuk the Gemara in Yuma uses instead, and it's the famous pasuk that comes in Parshas Korach after Korach challenges Moshe Benu and Aaron for the kahuna. So what does the pasuk say? Kodesh Baruch Hu says, this is all going to belong to you. The kahuna belongs to you, and I'm making a bris melech with you. As Rashi points out, why bris melech? But just like melech doesn't erode and can last for a long time, likewise this bris is eternal with Aaron HaKohen. So there's a pasuk. The first pasuk in Parshas Korach that explains exactly the question the Rambam is dealing with. Why does a Rambam not bring that pasuk instead? Good question? Yeah, good question? Yeah. Hmm?
He wants to include Pinchas. If it's just that one, you're not going to run Pinchas.
We don't have to include him. We don't have to include, because the Torah already includes him anyhow. The Torah gave him that pact. The Rambam is only dealing with the issue of Aaron's descendants in general. So it's all inclusive. Anyone says, but Pinchas wasn't a Kohen yet, so how can he include it? So we have another pasuk. That's a separate question. But why would the Rambam feel compelled to even include Pinchas in the picture, especially since the Torah itself already does that? So, you hear the question? Is it a good question? Yeah. Should we answer that question? Okay. You have to be medayik in the Rambam, right? The Rambam says the Keser Kahuna was earned by Aaron. That's the lot he earned. He actually earned it, right? Yehuda earned it because it was moeded back at the time of Tamar and whatever other aspects of Malchus are already in Yehuda, and we don't have any questions about that. But Aaron HaKohen, right? The Torah, the Gemara, and the Torah itself doesn't say that Aaron earned it. The Torah itself just says he gets it, and he has it forever. And it could simply be that he didn't earn it, but that's what I want it to be. That's the way Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I'm Kovea for whatever reason. I like the way he dresses, whatever the reason is, he is, and he's Moshe's brother, so how could you go wrong, and he's such an honor, all kinds of nice qualities. But, did he do a Maisa to actually earn the kahuna? Was it up for grabs? Just for example, the same way that before Abba came along, Anybody could have been the Jewish people. Well, not technically speaking, they could have been, but theoretically it wasn't really possible. But there was no Jewish people. Avram came along and chose Kodesh Baruch Hu. So therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu came along and chose Avram and his descendants. And once it was Koveya that's the reality. So likewise, Kodesh Baruch Hu says, for whatever reason, Aaron is destined to be the Cohen. He's Rod Shalom. So therefore, it's the Kuna is his from this point onward forever. That's all we know. The Rambam is saying, but let's ask a bigger question, a better question. Did he earn it? What did he do to earn it? That's the question the Rambam is dealing with. If we're only dealing with the issue of how do we know it belongs to him forever, that's Parshas Korach. But if we're asking the question, now, what did he do to earn it? That's a different question altogether. And for that, we have no answer. Not a visible answer, not an obvious answer, because there's never time Kodesh Baruch Hu says, because you did this already Cohen, you become the Cohen, and it's yours forever at this point on after. So the Rambam is saying it could actually work in reverse. Had this parsha not come along, the Rambam would never even ask this question in the first place. Why does he ask it? Because it's such a bizarre situation. The Rambam is saying we have a unique opportunity in this week's parsha to understand the kahuna. Why is that? Because we have somebody who wasn't a Cohen, did something, and became a Cohen. That's unique. Before this, we only had the kahuna, whoever was Aaron and his sons and his descendants after him. That's all we know. But now we have a unique situation out of nowhere, where Kodesh Baruch Hu not only rewards Pinchas for what he did, he rewards him with the kahuna ki'ilu. By another way of saying, anyone who does this is a Cohen. Anybody who, and there's nafkimis, for example, Melechus Kohanim, you can't become a Cohen in the full sense of becoming a Cohen, but it sure tells the Jewish people how we have to be Noah. What it means to be Melechus Kohanim, a nation of priests in the end. This is what being the Kun is all about. So that's what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is saying that since we have a situation where somebody who wasn't a Cohen before, distantly became a Cohen, so now we can ask the question reversed. How does this apply to Aaron? You're shaking your head.
Can't we say that Aaron did things in Mitzrayim to keep the Jewish people together? Can't we say things like he accompanied Moshe to speak to Pharaoh, and at times he was his strength? Can't we say that?
We can say all those things.
A lot of things that
Moshe and Aaron are standing around in the midbar, having a nice cup of tea, probably not coffee, but probably tea.
Strong tea.
Strong tea.
Doesn't have coffee. Teas. Strong tea.
Yeah.
But the Bedouins drink.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they're having one of these, right? And they're talking, and Aaron says to Moshe, he says, "No, why do you think Hashem made me kind? Forever." Curious thing, I don't know. Maybe it's because you wrote the Shalom in Mitzrayim. Maybe it's because of the fact you have such a nice family. Maybe it's because you guys are so spiritual. I don't know. There's a number of things, the same thing, for example, when Hashgacha Pratis happens for you for better, for worse, let's say for better, for good, right? You don't know why it's happened, but you go back in your previous week, your previous month, your previous lifetime, and you ask yourself the question, what did I do? Because first of all, A, it's nice to figure it out, to see you're rewarded for what you do nicely, and B, that maybe you can replicate this thing in the future, right? But you don't know in the end. Maybe it's because, maybe it's that time I was going to go home and I saw a person walking across the road with all these groceries. Instead, I gave him a lift, picked them up, help them out. Maybe that's what it was.
Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, "Why are you choosing me?" I don't know.
Exactly. Well, that was more. That was more to do with that's the more complicated.
I don't know if he really understood why he was being chosen.
Eventually, he did, but in the beginning, maybe not. But that's exactly that only strengthens the question. Because it just shows us until you know for sure, you don't know for sure.
Hashem wants you to.
Right. So we wouldn't ask. We wouldn't question. But it's because that Pinchas did this act, it became a Cohen. So now it opens up the box. It opens up not the can of worms exactly. So now you can ask the question. He can say, "Wait a second. This is really what the Rambam is doing. The Rambam is saying, wait a second. This guy wasn't a Cohen. He does a Maisa. Now, if Hashem had not come along and said he's going to become a Cohen, would you read this parsha and say, gee, he should become a Cohen for that? Would you have said that?
No, I wouldn't.
It wouldn't have crossed your mind. You would have said, he's a hero, he's a kanai, he gets all kinds of schar, he's famous, a parsha named after him, gets an ayud, his name. These are all things that make a lot of sense to us, right? But he became a Cohen? So the Rambam is asking, what's going on over there? Why did Kodesh Baruch Hu go out of his way to make him a Cohen in the end? And there must be some chiddush over here. And now that we see that an act of kanos is that which, makes a person a Kohen, plus the fact we got these neshamas as well, right? An act of zealousness makes a person a Kohen, so to speak. An official Kohen, you require these other things about the neshama being transformed. But certainly the tzura of becoming a Kohen. So now we can ask the question retroactively, so what did Aaron do? It was like Pinchas. He earned the right to be a Kohen forever and ever and ever after that. That's really what the Rambam is addressing over here. So so what does it mean to be a kanoi? That's the next question. But that's more technical. But a kanoi is, it's also important to point out because we have another episode of kanoos that takes place in the Torah where it's not sanctioned. And it is problematic. Where is that? Back at the beginning, or halfway through the beginning. In Parshas V'Yishlach, in Shechem, Shimon and Levi go in and they kill all the male inhabitants of Shechem in revenge for the episode of Dinah. Right? So the question becomes, what's the difference over here? What's the difference? Their episode is not only not sanctioned by Kodesh Baruch Hu and not by their father. It's even questionable if why would Yaakov not have done if it was the right thing to do in the first place. Why wouldn't Yaakov have done it? You guys go ahead and do it on your own, but you have to ask yourself the question: Why is our father not doing it? Is there something weak? He's an Av. He's one of the Avos. It's not so pashut that he's not going in there. And second, or third of all, fourth of all, whatever. We learn from the pasuk, as Rashi points out in Parshas V'Yechi, when Yaakov says it was taken, he gave Shechem to Yosef. It said it was taken by my sword and all that. So Rashi explains why, because at that point in time, the Amoraim, the Canaanim knew that at some point in time in the future, the Jewish people were destined to go to war against the Canaanim and conquer the land. But they thought that was hundreds of years away. But when Shimon and Levi went into Shechem and did this whole act of zealousness, and they killed all the male people of Shechem, they thought that maybe they were advancing the whole thing. So they girded their loins and went to war against the Jewish people. And Yaakov says we were outnumbered. We could have easily been destroyed by this whole thing. Had a miracle that happened on our behalf, you would have destroyed the Jewish people in your act of zealousness. So then what's the difference? So Rashi points out, the Torah points out in Parshas V'Yechi, that Yaakov, he doesn't criticize his sons as much as he criticizes their anger in the end. Meaning it was personalized. Yes, it was a deed that was done on behalf of their sister who was violated. It was restoring the dignity of the Jewish people. Yes, it was on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but yes, it was also on behalf of their own anger too. And the moment you mix your own personal feelings into kanos like that, everything gets very blurry. And what you have to do, there's once one of my Rabbanim, years and years ago, 20 years ago, was telling us a Maisa. He's like a fifth generation Yerushalmi. He's a big Talmid Chacham. And he's actually written Shalos and Shuvas Sforim, and I don't remember his name because of the Maisa, but he probably wouldn't care, but I just don't feel comfortable. And he was telling us that he used to throw these anecdotes in every once in a while. I don't remember what the background to this anecdote actually was, but he was telling us how when they first started putting up bus stops in Meir and Gula area, I don't remember those days, they used to put up ads for different things and they weren't modest at all. So every week there was a bus stop burning, it's it was destroyed or spray painted all over the place. So finally the advertisers caught on and realized they're not getting anything by putting it over here. There's losing things in the end. Probably Egg told them to stop it. But the people who were first angered by this and they wanted to do it, they actually went to Gedolim and asked the Gedolim to do it first. Not the Gedolim, but the bigger body of the community, because they could be Kanoim, they could be L'Shem Shemayim, and if anyone was going to do it, so they felt that they should be the ones to do it because that will be done properly. So the Rav told me that they all turned it down. They wouldn't do it because they felt it wasn't the proper response, and they were worried that they wouldn't have the proper kavanas, and so they didn't sanction it. So what happened? Of course, the Kanoim themselves went out and did it instead. And of course, whatever result resulted. Whatever war resulted as in the end, and I don't know how. I can't tell you how many times over the years I had to deal with the issue in Kiruv because people saw these things in the newspaper someplace 6,000 miles away. But the point is when it comes to an act of kanos, that you cannot be personally involved. You have to give yourself over to the cause completely. What made Pinchas unique, as Chazal point out, was the fact that he was willing to sacrifice Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba to do the Maisa. That's becoming divested of all personal interest. Olam Haba, because He was a kanoi, and a kanoi can easily become a rodif. In order to be a kanoi, you have to kill the person precisely at the right moment. If he didn't kill them at the moment of the act itself of Zimri and Cosby, a moment before or a moment after, first of all, if Zimri in self-defense had killed Pinchas before the whole thing, before the mice was taking place, or after, he would have been justified. Because Pinchas would have had din of a rodif, and you could kill him. So it had to be precisely the right moment, and that's what the Gemara points out. There are 6 miracles that took place for Pinchas to make it all happen properly. Why were there 6 miracles? If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. The answer is it was meant to be because Pinchas was L'Shem Shemayim, because Baruch Hu helped out. Whenever you're L'Shem Shemayim, and you're prepared to put yourself on the line completely, for the sake of Kosh Baruch Hu, for Torah, for Emes, then you get Siyata Shmaya, and it comes in the form of all kinds of fantastic miracles, and the impossible becomes possible in the end. Not necessarily every time, but certainly here, the story of Pinchas. So the question now becomes, if that's what the Kanoi is all about, and that's how Pinchas became a Kohen, by doing it that way, because to become a Kohen you have to anyhow. Because to be a Kohen in the first place, you lock yourself up in the base of Mikdash, and you're working, it's true, barbecued meat is a delicious thing, and people supporting you with the vegetables and all kinds of things like that, but the bottom line is being a Kohen is a very difficult thing to be. Today, not so much because, it's more of a covenant than anything else, but in the Zman base in Mikdash, it was a lot of work, and you were locked away, doing the Avodas Hashem. And if you were not L'Shem Shemayim, just think how a Kohen Mefagel, a korban, by thinking the wrong thing, you have to be very, very disciplined. And the halachas of Tumah v'Tahara were very strict, and it could ruin everything. So Kohen had to be completely Moser Nefesh for the cause, for the Jewish people. That's what made Pinchas become a Kohen. The question is, what did Aaron do, where he did this act of Kanot? We don't find Aaron, on the contrary. The story of Aaron a Kohen is he wasn't picking up spears and killing people. He was going from person to person, making shalom between this person and the husband and wife. He wasn't. But if Aaron had been the one to kill Cosby and Zimri, could he have done it? Absolutely, because he's a Kanoi. He didn't have to, but he could have. The question is, but where was he? Lamaisa. What did he do to become a Kanoi? Actually, where he's prepared to give up Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba at the same time. What did he do? By the Egel. Right? The Medrash says by the Egel, Moshe comes down from Har Sinai. He says to Aaron Kohen, it's a phenomenal line. He says, what did these people do? What could they possibly have done to you to get you involved in a Maisa like this? I can't begin to fathom, aren't my brother and you're such a tzaddik and so righteous, and how could you risk so much to be involved? What was the cheshbon over here? Very tough. Even Moshe, he didn't say, I understand where you're coming from, I can see, there's a huge mitzvah dam chaschus. And he was dam chaschus. But he couldn't find a schus. He had to ask Aaron himself what it was all about. So Aaron had to explain. And what did Aaron explain to him? The Medrash says, it's not Gemara, but I think the Medrash says that Aaron was prepared to stand in their way. He was prepared to block them. But he didn't. Why not? Because he saw that his brother-in-law, Chor was the husband of Miriam, right? He saw his brother-in-law had been murdered trying to do the same thing. He saw that. So Aaron said, if I try and stop them, they're going to kill me as well. Okay, so that sounds more like he's thinking about himself, not about the people. So the answer is that Aaron said, now Har Sinai, Kol Zman, the Shechina is shorter on the mountain, which is the case right now. It has a din of the base of Mikdash. Har Sinai had the din of a base of Mikdash. And Aaron had the status of a Kohen Gadol. And what is the halacha? If someone God forbid, kills the Kohen Gadol, it's a different story, right? But the real Kohen Gadol, they killed the Kohen Gadol in the base of Mikdash. What is the din for that generation? Ein lehem kapara b'chlal. There's no kapara. That's it for the generation. There's nothing you can do. The Misa itself will probably be miraculously clean up, but there's no kapara. So Aaron said, what good will it do if I go out there and I try and stop them from doing the Maisa Egel and they kill me in the process? What's going to happen? This whole generation is finished. They're through. They're not going to survive. So Aaron was prepared to sacrifice Olam Hazeh and Olam, because he could become Chayv Nis in the process, and Olam Haba, because by being involved in Negel Zahav, all that, he might lose the chelik in the world to come. But he said it's worth it to save these people, to keep them alive. That when Moshe comes back down the mountain, there's still a nation that you can talk to and save. I'm prepared to put myself on the line for that. And that act of kanos is to earn Aaron the kahuna, and it says after him forever and ever and ever. That's what the Ram is dealing with. So that's why Pinchas gets the kahuna as a reward. He did a Maisa Kohen. By actually avenging Kosh Baruch Hu's honor, as Kosh Baruch Hu says, Eishin Chamasi, right? He saved this nation by actually putting himself on the line and being prepared to give up a loma zeh and a loma ba for the sake of Klal Yisrael. That's the Maisa Kahuna. And that's why he gets the reward after the kahuna is resolved. But how does it actually physically happen? Spiritually happens, and that's to do with it actually. He was able to die, and the Kosh Baruch Hu put the neshamas of Nadav and Avihu into him instead, and the whole transformation took place. That's one level of transformation. The next level of transformation is even more sophisticated. And that is, as the Balatur points out, as we have discussed before in the past, that Pinchas, he morphs into Eliyahu Hanavi. Eventually, Eliyahu Hanavi didn't have a father, didn't have a mother, he wasn't born. He was basically Pinchas who, became a level up, a few levels up, and became Eliyahu Hanavi. The question, how does that happen? Okay, it's one thing that Nadav and Avihu came into him as a Gilgul while he was, still walking the face of the earth, and he became a Kohen in the process. Is one thing, but how do you become a prophet? How do you become Eliyahu Hanavi in the process? Again, in Shar Gilgul, he pointed the following thing. He says, in the case of a soul that comes to Sod Ibur after birth, like the nefesh of Nadav and Avihu that came into Pinchas, another spark must accompany it as well. So, when you have a Gilgul, when you're born from scratch with your own, a soul that's for your body, so then you get one soul. But when you get there's a different level of Gilgul called Ibur, where you get an additional soul while you're still living. You're still walking the face of the earth, and another soul comes into you, right? So then, not only do you get the new soul, but you must also get another soul that comes along to act as kind of a glue between the new soul and the old soul. That's not my rules. I don't make those things up. I would even imagine that. That's the Arizal and Shar Gilgulim based upon the Zohar in Parshas Mishpati. He says that new soul that came into Pinchas to tie the souls of Nadav and Avihu to his own soul is actually called Eliyahu Tishbi. That neshama. So now he's got Nadav and Avihu, Pinchas' original soul, and in the Zohar points out Nadav and Avihu counts as one soul. Even though it's two souls, it's actually two souls that count as one. So now he gets another soul called Eliyahu Tishbi. There are now three souls walking around inside of, not actually walking inside Pinchas. He's walking around with three souls. That's what he says. From the people of Gilad, and from the root of God, which was a new soul at that time. This was in order to combine the nefesh of Nadav and Avihu with the nefesh of Pinchas itself, a Gilgul from the time of his birth. He also required an additional soul in order to unite the new soul called Eliyahu Tishbi with the rest of the other souls as well, and the nefesh of Pinchas and that of Nadav and Avihu, right? So now he's got a new soul to unite Nadav and Avihu with the one of Pinchas. That's fine, which actually that one even comes from Yisrael and Yosef done previously as well. But now even the new soul needs another new soul as well to make it stay at the same time. So he says that one is called where is it? That one is called Eliyahu from the root of Binyamin. Mentioned because in Divrei Yam it's machlokas. It seems to be stira, not a machlokas stira. A contradiction because it seems that on one hand Eliyahu comes from God, Giladi, and the other hand Divrei Yamim talks about of Eliyahu coming from Binyamin. So which is it? So the answer is it's both, because the first one comes from God, and the second one comes from Binyamin, and that's the one mentioned in Divrei Yamim. The first was that of nefesh of Pinchas with which he was born, a single soul, even though it was a combination of two drops from Yosef and Yisrael as his own soul. The second level was a nefesh of Nadav and Avihu, which came besod Ibor, as we said when he died for that moment, and they came into him, they're floating around, they go to him. Was also considered to be one soul. The third was a nefesh called Eliyahu Tishbi, from the root of God, and the fourth was Eliyahu from the root of Binyamin. Right? And this is a sort of a chazal the Gemara, Michael in one, Eliyahu in four. It's talking about leaps through flying, but sort of the level of the Gemara talking about that Eliyahu actually had four souls. So this is the process that actually made it possible for Pinchas to become Eliyahu. There's actual transformation. He ends up having four souls. Now, what time is it now? So what happens after that? Because it's kind of like a black hole in a sense. We don't really see. Pinchas is there, and he goes to war in Parshas Matos. He's mentioned a few places after that. He disappears. Poof, he's gone, and then Eliyahu all of a sudden shows up. Right. So what happens? The Vav Katiya inside this was Parsha. The Vav is cut. So just the kids without going through all the notes itself, but the Rizal explains that actually this is worth being inside. So in the incident with Zimri, he married the Ibur of Nadav and Avihu, as we said before, as mentioned in the Zohar, but he lost the Ibur as a result of the sin of the daughter of Yiftach. Right, the story of in Navi, where basically Yiftach became the shofet of Klal Yisrael, an unlikely shofet became the shofet. He was so grateful he came back from war to be successful. He made the vow, the neder, of whatever walks up my door first will become a korban to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Unfortunately, that was his daughter, not the animal he was hoping for, and his daughter became Meshubah to Hashem. So the obvious question is, why didn't he simply do Heter Sadari? Well, you can do things like that, especially for things like, for his daughter. So what would happen over here? So this is why the Vav is cut, to represent the spirit of Yesod, which is called Brisi Shalom. It was actually cut when he lost the Shechina and the Ibur of Nadav and Avihu. So he got all of this in this week's Parsha, but later on in the future, in the book of Shoftim, Pinchas loses the Shechina because he makes a mistake. What's the mistake that he makes? It says, it had to do with the sin of the daughter of Yiftach. Eliyahu from the tribe of Binyamin had only been as an Ibur to join together their souls, thus remain as the main, well, it goes into detail, but the main point over here is that what should have happened was Yiftach should have gone to Pinchas, who was the main shofet at that time, and done a Tarsh Nadan to save his daughter. He felt he's not going to do it because he's the shofet. He's like the Gadol Hador, or at least the leader, the Mani Hador of the generation. Pinchas should come to him. So his daughter basically is languishing away because he's got too much pride. And it says for not going to take care of this, he loses the limbs of his body. Pieces of his body have to fall off in different cities. So it says when he's buried, he's buried in different cities. So the Rizal points out, why is it plural? Because literally he's buried in different cities. Parts of his body fall off as a punishment. Pinchas should have gone to Yiftach to say, look, now let's do a Tarz Adarmit for your daughter and save your daughter's life over here and give her a life. And he doesn't go because he figures the guy with the problem, who goes to the doctor? The doctor, it's true the doctor doesn't make house calls, we're not talking anymore today, right? But who goes to the doctor? House calls are only when the person can't come, right? When he can't get out of bed, the doctor goes there. But in this case, Yitzchak could have gone to Pinchas and asked for a Tarsh Adarmit and saved his daughter. He didn't come. Pinchas thought, therefore it's not for me to go to him. And as a result of that, the daughter of Yiftach fell between the cracks. Yiftach lost parts of his body because of it. Pinchas lost the Shekhinah. And he lost the Neshamas of Nadav and Avihu, which means basically he went back to being Pinchas all over again for a period of time. Later on, he gets it back by Har Carmel. In the episode of Har Carmel, when he becomes a Kanoi, once again, like he was back at the beginning, as Eliyahu. The whole tikkun also for Nadav and Avihu, the Rizal points out, because when they all fell on the ground, said Hashem Elokim, they did not look at the fire this time to make up for when Nadav and Avihu looked at the Shechina the first time at Har Sinai. It's all connected, interconnected, very much so. And then what happens, basically, the story of Zavel, the whole thing, so she knows through black magic that Pinchas has lost part of the neshama, which is why he's now vulnerable, which is why he runs to Har Sinai to take refuge from the whole episode, and eventually what happens is part of his neshama goes up in the fiery horse. Later on, the part already went up. The remainder part goes up in a fiery horse. That's when Pinchas is transformed into the Navi himself. But eventually, that's the part that comes back every single time for the brisim and all that, and on the Seder. It's a long story with a lot of details, but the main point is that this is, what is the bottom line message? And this is a very complicated and convoluted episode, so to speak, with all this going on, and there's more to this Vav also that we're talking about. Brisi Shalom, so many metanas that Kodesh gives to Pinchas. But the bottom line is when a person acts on behalf of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, L'Shem Shemayim, and tries, if he can't be L'Shem Shemayim, you have to seriously consider if your act of kanos is really the appropriate response to the situation. But if you can be L'Shem Shemayim as much as is humanly possible, as the Gemara points out, the Kodesh Baruch Hu helps out, and the impossible becomes possible, and the Kiddush Hashem becomes the Kiddush Hashem. And that's the ultimate, that's really what it means to become Memlechus Kohanim. Memlechus Kohanim, to be a nation of priests, means that we are a people as prepared to put a Loma Zeh and a Loma Ba on the line to do what's right. And the irony, just like, for example, kavod, honor, is for the person who runs away from it, which is exactly counterintuitive, because we figured that, to run away from it, you got noticed. But in life, of course, Baruch Hu makes it that the person who does not want honor is the one who gets honored. Likewise, for the person who makes the point of trying to sanctify Kodesh Baruch Hu's name, Kodesh Baruch Hu makes it possible for his name to become sanctified in the end. The person has to be L'Shem Shemayim and to be a Kanoi as well.